There's been some big news out of Europe overnight, with a free trade deal worth almost $100 billion hanging in the balance. Australia's Trade Minister Don Farrell raced to Brussels earlier this week in an attempt to break the deadlock with the European Union. But the talks have fallen short.
The EU has been threatening the right of Australian producers to use names such as prosecco and feta. But after 2 days of tough negotiations, there has been no compromise struck and both sides will need to reconvene next month. Let's go straight to political reporter Chantal Alcuri at Parliament House. Chantal, good morning. So what can you tell us about where these negotiations are at? Not in a good place, clearly.
That's right, Michael. This deal with Australia and the European Union has ultimately failed to resolve what's been 5 years of negotiations. Obviously, the minister, as you mentioned, has met with his European counterpart in Brussels for a 2-day trip, but there are some key differences they haven't been able to resolve between Europe and Australia, particularly over the degree to which the EU will open its markets to Australian farm products, notably beef. Also, so-called geographical indicators, which, if you don't know what it means, has been a sticking point throughout these negotiations. Basically, Europe demanding that Australia no longer use the names of hundreds of products, meaning that the future of Australian producers using terms like prosecco and feta hangs in the balance. Now, Don Farrell says that he's disappointed that a deal hasn't been concluded yet, but he does say that Australia was not offered a deal that it could accept, not even close. And he says that they're not just going to sign a deal for the sake of it. Here's some of what he had to say earlier in Brussels.
We've made it very clear right from the start that we won't simply accept any agreement. The agreement from the Australian point of view has to achieve meaningful agricultural access to European markets, and that's what we are continuing to pursue in these negotiations.
Now, Don Farrell, ahead of that trip, did flag that if negotiations weren't secured or didn't come to a conclusion, he was prepared to take them into the second half of this year. Now, you did mention that they will be reconvening next month to continue negotiations. He says despite this, he does remain optimistic. It's just going to take a lot more work and effort to actually come to a conclusion. He said he's prepared to take as long as it needs to get a result. Now, we have heard this morning from the National Farmers Federation. They say they support Australia's decision to continue these negotiations. They said that with some grit and goodwill from both sides, they think they can get this thing done in a way that'll benefit everyone, particularly Australian farmers.
Chantal, thank you.